Hey MSPs, welcome back. If you've been following along, this is day 3, recording number 3, as I'm talking my way through my MSP sales process. And I had a 5-step process that I used with pretty good success at my MSP, trying to get some of this information out there and help you guys out. So we're on step 3. That step is data collection. It's preceded by the stakeholder interview in step 2 and the right fit call in step 1. So the right fit call, hey, we're just sanity checking, making sure this customer has computers, has the right number of users, is somebody who's willing to spend money to solve technology problems, and isn't just a raving lunatic that we don't want to do business with. Step 2, that stakeholder interview, we're sending folks out to meet with the customer. That's usually a more of a sales function. We're talking to someone in every key role in the organization, and we're learning about the risks and the deficiencies that they have in their technology, how technology either fails to support the business goals, or maybe where it's successful in the things that we need to make sure that we keep doing once we bring in that new customer, that new piece of business. Our objective in stake 3 is really to get some data collection done. So what do I mean by that? We're trying to identify risk, and we're trying to identify technical deficiencies in the customer environment. So as we work through that objective, we need to make sure we understand the difference between technical deficiency and risk. Technical deficiency is something I'm going to own. It's something that's going to create trouble tickets. It's, hey, the main switch is plugged straight into the firewall and or into the cable modem, and there's no firewall there. Risk is more about the client side, right? They're not using multi-factor authentication, and this is something that they own, a problem that they have that we need them to take action to fix. I can bring a hardware service firewall as part of my quote. I can slap that in place. Problem's taken care of. It's much harder. It requires management buy-in for me to go in and say, as part of your service, I'm going to force you to enable multi-factor authentication or write a policy or a procedure or do something else. So we're looking for both of those things. We're trying to identify, where the network falls down, where the technology falls down, but also where there's elevated risk to the customer. The risk really is something that probably aligns with a lot of what we identified yesterday when we sat down and talked to the customer. So we're talking about things like, where does the workflow currently break down, where someone has to work overtime every month in order to get billing out the door? Where do they have to have technology that stands in the way of doing business, for example? One of the things we're looking to gain in this call is to set that defined next step, which is scheduling the confirmation call. The next step after this, we're going to take what we learned in the data collection call. We're going to compare it to what we learned in our stakeholder interview, and we're going to call that customer back, and we're going to remind them of the pain that they talked about in the stakeholder interview and align the tech to it and say, well, if I remember correctly, you told me that this process was really painful. What I found was outdated equipment, outdated, or improperly configured equipment that's probably causing that issue. So I can definitely see that issue, and it's something that I'm confident that we can help you fix. Right? We'll get into we'll get into that confirmation call and exactly how and why that works. But know that at the end of this call, we want to make sure we have that call set up and scheduled. At my MSP, I always scheduled these next 2 calls together. So I would schedule the data collection and the confirmation call together when I walked out the door after my stakeholder interview. If you find that you're getting ghosted in between the data collection and the stakeholder and the confirmation call, then you need to really go back and review that process. We want to make sure that this isn't something that's getting you ghosted in that gap in between them. So just be very aware of that process, how you're setting up your next calls, and make sure that whatever you're doing is efficient and effective for you. So I want to address the big question that comes up. I mentioned yesterday in my video that my buddy Tom Watson went out and did all this work himself. He did the stakeholder interview and the data collection at the same time. And he did this because he wanted to close that sale quickly. Bang, bang, get in, get out, get a presentation in front of the customer, and just knock it out, right? At my MSP, we took a little bit of a different approach, and I don't believe that one is any more right than the other. So I like to talk about where you might um, vary a little bit from the process that I did. I like to break this into 2 parts for a couple of reasons. A long time ago in my peer group, somebody said to me, put on a sports coat when you go out to visit a new customer for the first time, and they'll stop asking you to crawl under the desk and fix a problem. They'll actually start to treat you like a business owner or a business leader, somebody who they want at the table for their big conversations. But as long as you go out there dressed in your polo shirt and your cargo pants, they're going to expect you to turn wrenches and screwdrivers and fix things while you're there. If you're trying to set yourself apart from the next guy who's and nothing against the solopreneur MSP, if you're trying to set yourself aside from that guy, set yourself apart from that guy, separate these roles, let them know we have dedicated people who do the technical work and dedicated people who do the non-technical work, this business relationship kind of thing. So it was that impression setting that really led to this for me, as much as the ability to scale and delegate this work to somebody else in the future. If you ever want to get out of sales, you have to build a sales process that you can hand off to somebody non-technical or somebody else in your shoes and walk away from. And if you're doing all of the work, you're not building something that you can delegate. So if your goal is to delegate yourself out of this, think about that as you build the process. It's definitely something that needs to go into the process. So what are we doing while we're in the building? While we're in the building, we're scanning the network. We're walking through the server closet. I can still remember as I think back on this, like the mental image that comes up is walking up to that Dell server and pulling out that little tag and reading the serial number off it, right? And I'm going to read that serial number, then I'm going to take it and I'm going to plunk it in Dell's website. And I'm going to tell them how old their server is, right? There are certain things that just by laying eyes on them, I can see that there's a problem. If I walk in the room and see a blue 3-com switch, I know I've got a problem. If I walk in the room and if I can hear the Netgear switch from outside the door, the fans wailing away, then I know I've got a problem. And so these are the things that walk through the building will get me that a scan won't. If you're in a world where walking into the building isn't really realistic, maybe there's a geographical problem, maybe there's something else. Can you take on a customer without this? Yes. We were a very regional MSP, so I chose to make the drive and go ahead and visit with all of my customers, get the walkthrough, see how the environment was laid out, meet the people, build the relationship, and it led to a much higher close rate for me. So we're going to walk through. We're going to identify anything that we can physically see that's out of kilter. We're going to scan the network. That's going to give me a little bit more visibility into things that are harder to pick up on quickly and manually. Of course, we're going to look for overuse of privileges, misconfigured equipment, really poor Wi-Fi and things like that to make sure that we're not inheriting an organization that's going to have connectivity problems all over the place. So check for the basics, check for the things that you think are going to create trouble tickets when you've onboarded this person and they're now your customer. That's really it for the data collection phase. Really, what we do with this data is we take it back, we compare it to what we learned when we talked to the engineer or to the staff, and then we're going to put this into a presentation that we take to the customer. By this point, we probably have a pretty good idea of what we're going to recommend. We're probably getting really close. We'll talk about a little bit more about that confirmation call tomorrow, and we'll break that out into the next two phases, which are that confirmation call and the presentation. We'll talk about a little bit of the methodology behind the confirmation call, how we're setting the hook with our customer, and that'll really set us up for success. So I'll link the previous videos in the comments below. Feel free to engage in the comments, ask questions, challenge me on this. I mean, my process is probably not the best one out there. It's better than most. And I think that success for an MSP means building a process, perfect or not, and having something that you can go back and evaluate after every single sales call to figure out what did we do right that we want to keep doing, and what should we be doing better or different to improve in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back tomorrow.